agreement. This is recorded. Thanks, Kara, for helping. If you want to click over to the next slide that we've got, just a couple quick announcements as we before we get started. A couple upcoming events. We've got tomorrow is our Emerging Professional Roundtable hosted by Ginny and Cheryl. Information's on our chapter website. We have a couple of NIGP classes. Our next Lunch and Learn is with Radio NIGP, first Wednesday of March. And then following up March 7th with another class. Also, just to let everybody know that's on the call, NIGP opened up forum registration. So if it's approved in your budgets and you are so excited for so much fun, go ahead and register. It's in North Carolina. The city begins with a C and it's escaping
Charlotte.
me. Charlotte. Thank you, Maya. So Charlotte this year, like I said, registration's open on NIGP's website, and Stacy and the scholarship committee do have several scholarships available. So we'll be looking at our website for those opportunities as well. A couple things, please make sure that you're mute, at least on your microphone, not in real life. Check your participant name to make sure your name is listed. That's how we give you guys credits for CPE. You can right click on your video and choose to rename it. If you have any questions, raise your hand or enter in the chat box. Maya and I are kind of tag teaming to make sure that we're catching everybody's questions. Otherwise, I think that's all for me. So we're going to go ahead and open it up to Mariel Reed and Tammy Rhymes. Everybody knows Tammy and loves Tammy.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to ask if you can take down your slides and then I can share our slides.
Yes, and I'm just going to let Tammy and Mariel introduce themselves.
Awesome. Well, Mariel's going to kick this off. Let me get the slides deck up though first. And I will tell you, when you see the slide deck and see our first slide, when we first saw the title called Hide and Seek, it's kind of a fun, catchy title, but at the same time, we never want to hide anything in procurement. We're kind of all about transparency. And so when Mariel and I discussed this, we said, how about Go Fish? Go Fish might be better in the terms of procurement. So we kind of changed up the title a little bit, getting beyond Go Fish, maximizing the value of cooperative procurement. So that's the disconnect in the two titles, but it's the same topic and we're happy to be here. So Mariel, I'll let you take this away.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for taking some time out of your day to hang out with us, and always a pleasure to tag team with Tammy. Since I'm not as infamous, I'll introduce myself and just share. I'm CEO and founder of Pavilion, and previously I served in the city and county of San Francisco, which is home for me, where I worked on procurement. And before public service, I was an early employee at a tech startup that's since gone public, called Coursera. So I had this experience in the tech world, and maybe like some of you who are more plugged into like what's happening in the tech space. When I moved from like the tech industry into local government, I had sort of this recalibration moment of like, what the heck? I'm here in procurement trying to put millions of dollars to work on behalf of my community every single year. And it felt like the tools and the processes that we have access to as public servants aren't as good most of the time as what we're used to doing just as consumers on our phone. So particularly when it came to hunting down, seeking out, as Eric kind of mentioned in the comments, like seeking out those cooperative or piggybackable contracts, I felt like, what I was doing and what most of my colleagues were doing was sending a bunch of emails, making a bunch of calls to people on my network, visiting a bunch of outdated websites, and really did feel like this game of Go Fish. So Tammy, if you could advance to the next slide, please. I don't know, again, if many of you have felt like you're playing this game, but oftentimes it'd be like trying to do search, but you're playing this game with other public procurement practitioners, probably a lot of the folks in this Zoom room, and with technology that hasn't really changed much since the 90s. We've been able to visit websites since the 90s. We've been able to send some emails. We've been able to call people in our network, and the world of technology has evolved since then. So Next slide, please, Tammy. I set out to kind of, marry this background that I had in the technology industry with my experience and passion for public procurement and recognizing this gap. And so for context on, again, just to wrap up my intro and Pavilion and the perspective I'm going to share today, I started Pavilion based on this kind of pain that I just experienced. And our platform is basically search for these cooperative and piggybackable contracts. So you can find, use, share contracts from all across the country, all in one place and for free. And we're doing our best to basically make it really fast and easy to find a contract you can use, to expedite and go through your due diligence, and to be able to move forward if that contract is appropriate as quickly as possible. So just a couple stats here. We've built the largest data set so far of cooperative and piggybackable contracts. I sometimes call them shareable contracts because I think oftentimes when we say cooperative, we think of the national purchasing cooperatives, which we have, but we also have these piggybackable contracts from local and state entities as well. So more than 100,000 of those shareable contracts on the platform. We serve buyers in all 50 states, and we're growing quickly. So, and then, if folks are interested and we have time, it's also been a really fun time to be building this kind of experience, because the search technologies in the industry are changing really quickly because of artificial intelligence. And so we've been putting AI to work, again, in service of serving public servants and practitioners, and happy to share more about that for anyone who wants to nerd out about how AI is changing the landscape. But the high level is, please think of us as the technical go-to resource for collaboration when it comes to cooperative purchasing, piggybacking. And that's my intro about me and Pavilion. And now to provide more context on cooperative procurement and piggybacking, over to the infamous Tammy Rhymes.
Thanks, Mariel. And I'm glad you mentioned that the cooperative world is bigger than just those cooperative organizations out there that put in place these contracts. I mean, 2 or more agencies get together and collaborate on a contract. That's a cooperative contract as well that others can use. So I'm here on behalf of NCPP. It's an association, very much like NIGP or any other procurement association, but we're in that slice of the pie called cooperative procurement. And so we have a 360 membership of cooperative organizations, of suppliers who hold a cooperative contract, and the most important group, you, government and public procurement folks. So our mission is to create and to collaborate and create educational content. But here's the catch on this. I'm also a former purchasing agent, used to work for the city of San Diego, and longtime government manager. So any materials that we put out, I'm very cognizant that we need to be agnostic. And I also realize that cooperatives aren't the only game in town. As a former purchasing agent, sometimes I had to go out to bid or issue my own RFP. Sometimes I used the P card, occasionally a sole source. But cooperatives were something that I brought into my organization just to help with the workload. So NCPP is a resource for you. You can join as a free member and take advantage of all the educational content that's available. One point out I want to tell you is next month, I'm going to plant a seed here. March is National Procurement Month. And a few years ago, NCPP started this award called the Above and Beyond Award, where peers can nominate their teammates for this Above and Beyond award. So watch out for this announcement. I'm going to send the flyer next week when they roll out the nomination period. Please think about a peer who you can nominate for this award. And it's a national award that gets publicized in NIGP, CAPO, FAPO, TEXPA. They all share the word about these winners. So I just wanted to give that little plug. So in our role as procurement, we actually serve as a leader. And it doesn't mean in the hierarchy of our organization, but within we have to influence others. So the 8 leadership skills, this is very timely because in December issue of Forbes magazine, they came out with what makes a leader. Push the envelope. We're very solution focused. Well, shoot, that's procurement right off the bat. We possess accountability. In fact, we possess accountability for the whole organization. We're trying to keep everybody in track and out of the newspaper. We're supposed to inspire enthusiasm and lead by example. And then gaining fresh perspectives to consider the greater good are all part of what procurement does. I mean, this is the list of what the skill set is for procurement. But often we don't always see ourselves as leaders in our organization. And I have to tell you, leadership is not about a title or your position or somewhere in the flow chart where your box lies, but it's one life influencing another. So I'm going to kind of push a little bit bigger than just cooperative procurement. Are you considered a leader in your organization, or do you take leadership roles on projects or initiatives or problem solving? And it's something to think about on it's sort of controlling your destiny, because in procurement, we are super reactive. I mean, on any given day, you come into the office or you're at your desk at home and you think you kind of know what you're going to take on that day. And then it happens. The call comes in, the email gets sent. You look at the newspaper and suddenly you're like, what the heck am I dealing with now? And that's how procurement often rolls. But what we're looking for is hopefully to give you some tips and ideas to be more proactive, to be more strategic, to use new tools, to really get ahead and start being that go-to person that people look up to and then sort of influence that workflow. So the challenges in procurement, we all know them, and I'm speaking to the choir here, but some of this comes out of research by GovWin by Deltek. And what they have shown in surveying public procurement professionals, these are what we consider some of our challenges. And that bureaucratic process, we get waylaid by that as well. And we didn't create these processes. It's usually mandated from legislation, or that's the way your policies have been written by your attorneys within your office. And yes, you have to jump those 3 hurdles before you do that one thing. Getting participation from vendors is becoming a strain for many. You do all the work to put a bid out on the street. You think you got it all. You've done your outreach. You've really sent those emails out, and now the due date, and you don't have one bid. It's a no bid situation. We never really have time to do a lot of research and planning because procurement knows a little bit about a lot of stuff, but we really don't get into the weeds of any particular industry. So let me give you an example. For instance, what if you had to go out to bid for lawnmowers? Well, other than mowing my own yard, I'm not really an expert in lawnmowers. And it's not like my job is going to give me all the time in the world to do research on lawnmowers, maybe even travel to some golf courses. You know, that just doesn't happen. In between all our other work, that's how we're putting together our bids and RFPs. And oh, now they passed a new regulation, or OSHA has just come out with new requirements, or now there's new standards with fuel and energy. And then there's social goals, minority, women, disadvantaged business. So it seems like all of these things come into procurement, and suddenly we're supposed to make all of this happen. So on any given day, it's the go fish mentality. Do you have this? Do you have this? No, I don't. Go fish. So procurement's a tough role within any organization. And so we're hoping to give you some tools to help in that. So cooperative procurement is one tool that came out. Actually, it's been around for a couple of decades, but it came about as a way to streamline the procurement process. And for those of you that are listening that not sure what it is, the concept is simple. It means that a public entity or a group of public entities or a cooperative organization has gone through that solicitation process that you would have done on your own. So whatever, all of the path, putting it out on the street, advertising it, getting the suppliers to respond, having an evaluation, doing the negotiation, signing off on the contract. Somebody else has done that for you. And now you have this swaddling baby of a contract that you can now use to obtain the goods and services. Now, you still have to do some due diligence and make sure it complies with your rules and regulations. But I'm telling you, instead of having a months-long bid process, you're able to purchase within a day or two. So the top reasons, and again, this is from GovWin, why you would even want to go this route are these. The first is to save time. I just talked about that. That contract is ready to go. While you still need to vet it and you still need to check out the terms and conditions, the pricing, all of that, you don't have to do the solicitation. That's the long, hard part. It's been done. And the second is to save money, because just think of it this way. There's reasons why you go to Costco or Sam's Club or any big box store. You want the warehouse pricing. Well, here's a contract where multiple entities are going to be purchasing off of, and the supplier knows that. So they have put together a comprehensive package with a lot more SKUs than you would probably ever put in your own bid. And knowing that a lot of folks are going to be buying off of it, it drives down pricing for all. The third is proven solutions. And this is a part I love because in procurement, we call each other, we share information. And I love that about this profession. So I can ask the supplier or the co-op, who else is using this contract that's comparable to the size of my city? Pick up the phone and say, hey, how's this working for you? These contracts are sometimes the most vetted used contracts out there. So you can get first word from your peers. But this also kind of solves the problem of that sole source. So let's say you have an IT director that wants to standardize. He only wants Dell computers and he only wants HP printers. Well, you can't put a bid out on the street that says, hey, everybody else need not apply. This is the only thing I'm buying, because now you're going to get protests. But here's a way to reach out to Dell or HP and say, hey, do you have a cooperative or a state contract or some contract that I can piggyback upon? And it kind of helps you solve that standardization or the sole source. And then the last one is filling gaps in emergencies. And many of you experienced that during the pandemic, trying to get PPE supplies, special janitorial supplies. It was quick and easy to finally fill in the gaps of your own contracts. And another reason is the pricing is locked in. So think of this. How much is a generator before an emergency or a hurricane? And how much is a generator during or after the hurricane? The price spikes, but on an already negotiated locked in contract, you're going to still get the same pricing. So these are the key reasons why you might want to go that route. Now, who's using cooperatives? Well, school districts are number one. They are way up there, right with the states. So even those states are so big and they put out contracts for their political subdivisions to use, even the states have gaps and they use cooperative contracts as well. Then it's followed by cities, special districts, and that includes airports, wastewater, water districts, planning departments, housing commissions, and then counties, and followed, and then the smallest group is higher ed. And higher ed is a little bit different because they often they're a little bit more freedom than the rest of us. Let's just say that. So a lot of the times they don't always, particularly private colleges, don't always have to follow exactly what public procurement has to do. But this tells you where the spend is happening. The other part is, what are they purchasing? And Deltek's data shows that these are the top categories, but the four main categories are construction and equipment, including heavy equipment, operations and maintenance, technology and telecom, and then finally transportation and vehicles. And the biggest growing space is the EV market. Electrical vehicles and the infrastructure to support them are now on cooperative contracts, and a lot of people are starting to take advantage of that. And then here are the procurement trends. Obviously, cooperative purchasing is growing rapidly, but then the other things that we're juggling are accessibility, sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, these are what they're finding in bids, but they're also being included a lot of times in cooperative contracts because those folks know this is important to procurement. And then I just want to pull back the curtain a bit because we know the procurement side of the table, but we always don't understand the supplier side. So I just want to share this tidbit with you. For a typical supplier who has a cooperative contract and using that contract to sell to government, here's where their revenue comes from. So 34% of their revenue comes from responding to your bids and RFPs. Then you've got sole sources, informal purchasing, P-card purchases. Statewide contracts is right behind that with subcontracting. And then there's that piece of the pie for cooperatives. This is just an average, so about 11%, but I've seen as high as 35% for some specific suppliers, particularly in the heavy equipment area. So when you are talking to a supplier, they should be offering their cooperative contract, but they may also be offering it when they're reading your bid and RFP. They may say, you know, I've got this cooperative contract. Do I really need to respond to this bid? Because I can actually give you better pricing and more value through that co-op. So I just wanted to show you a little bit from the supplier side. They think cooperatives are important too, and are really bulking this up in their sales strategy. One activity that we're doing right now that hopefully will help the profession is, this is a question I get asked at most conferences, and it can come from both sides of the table. Suppliers ask it and procurement asks me. So how much does it cost on average to conduct your own solicitation, whether it be a bid or RFP? And you know what? Nobody has the answer. I have researched it. Now, individual entities might have tracked their own costs, and there are a few of those out there, but a national survey has not been done. Well, it's being done now. Starting last August, after NIGP Forum, we opened the RFP tracking project so that entities can track all of the time in half-hour increments of anyone who touches that, from the customer department to your legal counsel, the buyer one to the CPO. They're all tracking their time. And then we'll be using national salary ranges for an apples to apples comparison to come out with some price ranges for you. It's going to be helpful to procurement. So if you piggyback on a co-op and your city manager says, well, why didn't we go out to bid for this? You might say, well, according to the data out of this report, did you realize it costs blank dollars to do our own bid? We're only buying a $5,000 item. And if it costs us $25,000 in resource time to go out to bid, wouldn't it make sense to piggyback? But it'll also help you on other things like requesting resources in your budget for just analyzing strategically where the time should be spent. Remember, we're talking about leadership in procurement, and having data in front of you helps with those leadership decisions. So expect that report to come out the end of March or April. I'm really excited about it. We have about 50 entities participating. And so that'll be something that I'll probably come back to your group and share the results. And then finally, before I turn it back to Mariel, I wanted to share one other resource. NCPP partnered with NIGP to write a global best practices paper on the strategic use of cooperative procurement. It's got 6 guidance principles in detail, the history of cooperatives, and also what you need to do as you're vetting these contracts, the questions you need to ask to have a real strategy. It's downloadable on the NIGP website. Just look under the Global Best Practices tab, and you could download a copy of this. It also helps if you're trying to educate somebody else, because a lot of times procurement gets trained on this, but now you have a fleet director trying to figure this out because they've been allowed purchasing power, or you have to go before your city council and they've never heard of this thing called cooperative procurement. You can pull stuff right out of this document to help with your own presentation. So this is a free resource committed by NIGP and NCPP together to create something for procurement. So Mariel, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tammy. And yeah, I wanted to share a little bit about some of the ways. So we've been talking about and Tammy walked through some of the high level value props, but I wanted to share a couple of other ways that we at Pavilion are seeing how procurement leaders are really leveraging cooperative procurement to drive value. And so I think you all understand, and it's been so fun to follow along on and support the project that Tammy mentioned around quantifying the cost savings of agencies, around how cooperative and piggyback contracts can drive efficiencies within an agency, but also seeing how sharing contracts is helping to create some new regional efficiencies to really enhance customer focus. So I think a lot of folks in the public procurement community are thinking oftentimes around all right, my engagement with that end user isn't always the easiest relationship to manage. How do we kind of improve and strengthen that relationship? And we're seeing some cool innovations there. And then on the supplier side, the costs that Tammy mentioned that have been quantified on the public procurement side, the business community has also started to quantify them on the supplier side. So there are some major benefits to suppliers, and especially small, local, and diverse suppliers that I want to highlight here. So Tammy, if you can advance the next slide, please.
Sure.
Cool. So I just wanted to share an example from an organization that we work closely with. And again, it's been neat to follow along with. And this is Orange County in California. So I know we were just talking about all the terrible weather that Southern California is getting. They're probably getting pummeled this week too. But maybe a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, we connected with the chief procurement, the head of procurement there, Maria Agrisa, who had this vision for not only making sure that her team could access cooperative contracts, could figure out, hey, when is there a contract out there that we should be using that's been created by a national purchasing cooperative? But also this idea that, hey, we should also be able to share our contracts and make sure our own agency and departments can access our own contracts easily, and that others in the region who want to access our Orange County contracts or who want to contribute their own contracts have a way to do that too. And so Maria basically tapped us at an event kind of like this one and said, hey, what you're doing to make search happen is really neat. I have some ideas about how that could be better. Can we work together on that? And what came out of that is actually this search bar that you see here, which is now available for any organization. I think I saw Alejandro in the, not to put you on the spot, Alejandro, but Alejandro in the group as well, coming from Providence and Rhode Island. And they actually also recently added this search bar as well. So Maria kind of led the way on creating this little search bar that could let everyone in her own department, her own team find contracts, and they actually added their own contracts as well. So Orange County for a long time had been including cooperative language, piggyback language in their contracts as a default. But again, it was that game of go fish where any other agency who was in the area, like Santa Ana or Irvine, Long Beach, who wanted to use the contracts that the county had created, had to email or call the county and kind of play this game of hey, do you have a contract for this? In order to find out if a contract existed that they might use. So we worked with Maria and her team to add all these Orange County contracts. And as you can see here, there are more than 2,000 active Orange County contracts. It's a big county. I think the 5th or 6th largest in the country. So they had a lot of active contracts. And of those, more than half or half or so include that shareable language. And so Orange County added all these contracts, and they created this search bar so that their own users could find their own contracts, but also so that other folks in the region could find them as well. And again, it's been really cool because we've seen that those local contracts, the ones that Maria's team have created, have gotten a lot of views and visibility, and both within the region and actually even outside of it, which I'll share a little bit more later. Next slide, please, Tammy.
Hey, Mariel.
Yes.
Can I jump in with a quick question from the group?
Please. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Victor's wondering if there's any tips on getting more information about procure-to-pay companies that work well with cooperative contracts, especially with setting up punch-out catalogs.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely a few of those that come to mind. And I know, Victor, you had messaged that you're in the midst of that ERP implementation, which I don't envy that. That's a lot of work. But yeah, I think you can certainly go ahead and search for some of those keywords on Pavilion. And I'll show you how to do that with this as an example, and then can take you through it here as well. And then in terms of follow-up, I'll show you also, it's possible to kind of reach out and get additional information. I think most of the time here, you'd probably want to be in touch with the suppliers themselves. We can show you on Pavilion what contracts exist, what suppliers have been awarded, make sure that you know that the scope is available, but we can't always answer specific questions on behalf of the supplier, like, hey, do you integrate with XYZ ERP tools or systems? And pricing, the specific pricing, and we can talk more about this too, but because our perspective is we want all the information to be available as much as possible. So we're always pushing for that. But there are some reasons why suppliers or the cooperative organizations don't always publish their pricing. So you might have to reach out and get additional information to follow up on the specifics of pricing. So yeah, why don't I take you through that a little bit later, Victor, and we can see if there's anything that matches your need already on Pavilion.
I have another follow-up question. Kara's wondering, how does Pavilion decide what contract databases to pull from? Or is it just all information posted by agencies to Pavilion? And then is Pavilion always updating and pulling from more sources? So I think,
yeah,
Kara, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Great question, Kara. So again, when I started this this project, I was basically like, all right, can I at least pull in some of the national purchasing cooperatives and maybe some state contracts? So at the bare minimum, I don't have to open like the 6 or 7 tabs from the co-ops that I know and would visit or would remember and like look through their content. So we started by aggregating contracts from those big national purchasing cooperatives, the GSA. I know some folks can use GSA contracts, some can't. So that's, you can filter those out if your agency for whatever reason can't use them. And many state entities too. So again, sort of the contracts with the widest possible use that were national in scope to save every procurement practitioner across the country some time in finding contracts again. And the initial value prop was like, hey, let's at least save you the couple minutes that it would take to open up those 6 or 7 tabs, run those distinct searches, and tell you if something exists or not. Since that time, we've started working with local agencies more and more, and actually connecting and working with some of the e-procurement systems that some of you may use, like OpenGov and Bonfire, to make it really easy for agencies that want to share their contracts to Pavilion. Because if you're like me, a lot of the stuff that you might want to buy is not necessarily covered on a national cooperative contract. So Tammy showed that great slide with sort of distribution of, hey, what are the top kind of industries in the cooperative procurement world. But on Pavilion, we actually see the demand to use cooperative contracts is really, really, really spread out. And what I mean by that is like the searches, the queries that public procurement practitioners are running on our site. I think we track over 70 categories, and no more than no one category has more than 5% of searches. So what that means is like, actually, you know, folks are trying to find pretty much everything on a piggybackable contract. And oftentimes that contract, like for, I don't know, landscaping services or janitorial, like especially local services, you might want to work with a local vendor, and you also might want to get something that's not super well covered on within the national purchasing cooperative portfolio. So we've been really trying in specific areas to unlock more of this local data, and it's been awesome when we do get to work in a region to sort of like critical capacity, because all of a sudden the search results change, and the results that you see tend to have much more coverage of local services, local vendors, and also you know, like a much wider range of especially again those local services that are available because they're coming from other local government agencies. So I would say, like, again, just to answer that question, we started out kind of thinking, all right, how do we save everyone's time? Let's get the national purchasing cooperatives in. Let's get state contracts in, and we can at least kind of save you the trouble of opening up those tabs. But increasingly in different areas of the country, we have particularly good coverage right now in Texas, in Florida, in Arizona, where we've worked with local groups, kind of like this one, and gotten some critical capacity from local agencies that are sharing their contracts on Pavilion. We see a really transformative experience, because all of a sudden you're able to look inside your neighbor's filing cabinet and without having to call them or send an email on blast to the entire group. So I would say it's been a combination of like opportunistic and where there are really strong groups that are already kind of working together, have the intent to want to collaborate regionally. NIGP chapters have led the way. We're working, for instance, in Florida with the Southeast Florida Purchasing Cooperative there, in the Kansas City Regional Purchasing Cooperative, and the agencies that are part of the NIGP chapter in that region led the way. I think I saw Eric Wicks in this conversation too. And I remember early days, you know, we worked with the Portland, I guess the Columbia chapter of NIGP in the Portland, Oregon metro area. And they already had like a spreadsheet basically where folks were trying to share contracts. So we're really guided by like, where's their interest and desire to share. And to the extent we can, we really love unlocking some of that local data, because it's transformative for the search experience for you. And also we're seeing, and I'll show you with Orange County, we're seeing some really exciting results when it comes to also driving business, driving economic development for local suppliers. sorry, that was a lot of information, but anyway, we would love to work with you and this group to the extent there are folks interested in sharing your contracts with each other, and just taking away the burden of having to like respond to each other with like answering the Go Fish question, because it is digitized. I'm going to jump back in, but feel free to drop questions in the chat or even just interrupt me. I'm just going to take you through a little bit of how this works in Orange County and highlight some of the value props, but love the conversation and discussion and any ideas that folks have about how we can, again, through the technology that we're building and the capacity that we have to create user-friendly technology for the public procurement sector, best serve you and help you collaborate with others in your region. So again, just to highlight here, you can search for those shareable contracts. When we say shareable, what's going to show up is both the Orange County contracts that have been added by the county, and then also all of those contracts. And we have over 400 sources and growing. We do refresh them and update them regularly. I think, Kara, that was another part of your question. So there's some sources that get refreshed really frequently, like every single week. With OpenGov pretty soon, part of our integration is like it'll be automatic. If you're publishing your contracts to OpenGov, they'll be refreshed instantly on Pavilion, which is really exciting. So we refresh that data. And next slide, please, Tammy. And as I said before, the search technology that's powering this tool has changed a lot, even in the last couple of years. So in the very early days, it was all about like keyword match, like let's match you on keywords. We'll read all the documents for you and we'll highlight where something that you want to find like shows up in the docs. But that was a really junky search experience, because if anyone's ever tried looking for like, public records software or something like that, every single contract pretty much has a clause that asks the vendor to comply with public records statutes and laws. And so a keyword match, you'd get like all kinds of results that weren't relevant. So that's changed. We've been able to use artificial intelligence to understand the semantic intent of your query. So a fun one that I've talked about a little bit has been like in the old days, if you search zombie, which like you wouldn't search, but it's just a fun query. And we'd show you like a match from an article next to a solicitation advertisement. So totally irrelevant result. Now, I think I ran the search as a user in Arizona, and I got dead animal collection services and like bioterrorism mobile command vehicles as my top two results. So again, just kind of understanding the intent of like, that's definitely related to zombies. We can show you more relevant results. So see those best matches first. Again, understanding the intent. Next slide, please, Tammy. Yeah, and then as I said before, you can make these contracts available to your own teams. So again, the days in the case of Orange County, it was like, we have 22 departments, over 200 procurement staff, and there's no one place to even see the contracts our team has created really easily and pull those up. So when it came to saving time on the team, and then also creating a better end user experience of like, hey, we actually already have a contract for that, and here's where you can find it. This was really helpful for them. But then from a regional perspective too, as I said, we all play that game of Go Fish with our neighbors and our neighboring agencies. And now that Orange County has shared their contracts on Pavilion, it allows those other agencies in the area to actually find them as well. So here's an example with paper recycling, where again, like Santa Ana, Irvine, anyone in the California area can now find these contracts as well. Next slide, please. Cool. And then we're always changing kind of how you can customize search. So one thing that we updated is, like the ability to show suppliers that meet your diversity criteria. So if you're particularly looking for suppliers that have certain diversity credentials, local suppliers is one that comes up a lot too. So just different ways to kind of filter your search depending on what you need. And I know that's a consideration sometimes too in evaluating, hey, should we use this contract or this contract? Well, what are our goals? Do we want the best price? Do we want to work with a local vendor? Do we want to work with a diverse supplier? These different things. Again, we're not going to tell you what the right answer is for your agency, but we want to help you meet your goals a bit faster using the technology that we can make available. Next slide, please, Tammy. Yeah, so here's just, again, an example of filtering to local contract sources. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then due diligence. Man, how many of you have spent a lot of time doing Control F in documents or being really, really frustrated when the document that you're looking through is actually an image file and you can't keyword search it? That is really frustrating. I know I've spent some time doing that. And so the ability to search through documents and check off things on your due diligence is something we are definitely prioritizing. Next slide, please. And then again, just accessing the documents in general, right? So like being able to complete your due diligence because the full documents, the solicitation, the contract, any amendments are all there. Next slide, please. And then connecting with the right supplier or contact, or even just messaging multiple suppliers at once. So we have the ability to basically start an email thread with the supplier or also with the contract admin. So, say I want to reach, San Diego back when Tammy was there. And I found a contract she created on Pavilion. Well, I could actually just start the email to Tammy's team by hitting message contract admin on top there, and it would go to her with her team with a question. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay, so that's basically like how this technology of sort of finding contracts and taking this game of Go Fish online can help you and your individual team, right? Of like find the contract you can use. And I just wanted to highlight, this was actually, and this is kind of nerdy, but this was a report that came out in 2017. And it was a civil grand jury report in San Mateo County in California, so close to where I live. And it was looking at, how the county and the 20 cities in the county could save money just by sharing more as a region. And I was really inspired by this report because, as Tammy pointed out, as we're collecting kind of feedback from these different public procurement agencies about the costs of awarding a new contract, we can actually start to quantify that range. Some as high as $80,000 to award a new contract when it's a really complicated, complex RFP. What does that look like to help an entire region collaborate and save? Well, this report kind of took a look and predicted 5 to 15% savings to entities from regional collaboration as kind of an added benefit. So again, if everyone shares, puts their cards on the table and shares their hands together, there's additional benefit that we can all reap, which is really exciting. Next slide, please. And then I just want to highlight, I think oftentimes we think about trying to use, and I said in selecting a contract, a cooperative agreement, or piggybacking on a contract, whether or not you're directing your spend to local vendors or to diverse vendors is one consideration. But there's an innovative approach that I just want to make sure to highlight here, which is to also think about how sharing your contracts, including that cooperative language and sharing your contracts can actually be really valuable for your own awarded vendors as well. So basically being able to add a multiplier effect to any contract that you award, especially if it's a contract to a local business or diverse business. Again, when we looked at the OC data, we saw that that about 2/3 of the vendors that were awarded by Orange County were actually only awarded, like their only shareable contract was an Orange County contract. They weren't on any national contracts. They weren't on any state contracts. They weren't even on any other contracts from other agencies. So there were a lot of small businesses and kind of non-incumbent suppliers that, because Orange County included this language and now is publishing these contracts, they're getting the benefit of being able to lower their costs to sell more into the public sector. And the economic development story that Orange County is starting to tell is just really, really exciting. We're grateful to be able to support it. And so I just want to kind of highlight this as a leadership factor or idea. Again, you can direct your own spend when you're choosing a cooperative or piggyback contract to a supplier that is local or is diverse, but you can also think about encouraging and enabling the supplier community and kind of spurring local economic development when you think about how you award your contracts. If those have cooperative language kind of as a default or piggyback language as a default, and then by publishing them and making them visible, you can help those small businesses that you've awarded actually get new customers and lower their cost of doing business in government, which again, for those smaller businesses is particularly meaningful. So just highlighting, it's been really cool to see some of the contracts from Orange County have been viewed as far away as Virginia. And we just actually got kind of some more stats and saw 5 purchases happen with those kind of more local vendors in the last month or so off of those Orange County contracts. So piggyback actions that are happening on those small and local businesses can be really meaningful. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just again, I hope you can tell we love cooperative purchasing, piggybacking, but mostly we love like collaboration and thinking about how we can build the technology tools that power collaboration and help kind of shift this game of Go Fish to a more winning hand, if you will. And so just want to offer, you can use Pavilion. It's free to create an account. We do ask that you create an account so we know where you're coming from. And so we can improve your experience over time. And then, you can run searches. If you want to do a walkthrough or training with your team, we're always happy to kind of give more detailed explanations of like all of the things that you can do. And then, as I said, it's really meaningful if you do decide to share your contracts, especially if a couple folks in the same area start to do that all together. It can really change the experience for the better, for everyone in the region, just to get a few agencies starting to share their local data. And we're working hard to make that easier and easier through our partnerships with some of these e-procurement tools like OpenGov, like Bonfire. But even if you don't use those tools, if you're interested, we have a whole team here who can help you get set up to make sure your own contracts also appear for your own users here as well. So that's it for me, and happy to answer any questions and take any feedback. Again, we always love product suggestions too. But back to you, Tammy, to bring us home.
Great, thanks. And I'm always one of these that it's always great when you go to a session or attend a webinar and you're like, wow, I'm all gung-ho then. And then you click that close window, and now you're checking your email, and now you're on to the next project. And there's a disconnect between the next steps of a webinar. So Mariel's given you a few, but I'm going to give you some next steps as well, just in the range of cooperative procurement. So the first thing is conduct your own research on these cooperative organizations. And I'm not going to endorse any particular one because it depends on your entity's rules and regulations. So on the NCPP website, we have something that's our #1 resource. It's called a roadmap to a cooperative procurement strategy. And it actually folds out like the old Rand McNally maps. And yes, I'm dating myself for those of you that remember dad or mom reaching in the glove compartment to pull out the map. But this map gives you all the questions that you need to ask. And the questions, they're developed from public procurement folks, not cooperatives, public procurement. So the questions you need to ask of the cooperative themselves, about the contract, about the supplier, and then questions for you to consider for your own agency, because you never just want to blindly just piggyback on somebody else's contract or just assume it's okay because others are using it. Because as leaders, we're ultimately responsible for our decisions. And you also have to think of your funding sources. So it's very important if you're using federal funds, FEMA, ARPA, CARES Act funds, state funds, you really need to make sure that it complies with the rules, because a lot of those funding sources require a competition. Now, cooperatives did have a competition, but you have to make sure it was done properly the way the feds want you to have it done, because nobody wants an audit where procurement is found lacking. The next opportunity is your expiring contracts. And if you have any way to look at your contracts, let's say for the next 3 months, next 6 months, what's expiring, and really look at that list. You and your team sit down and say, are we really going to go out to bid to replace all of these? Can we combine any of these contracts together? Can we maybe take these 10, go look for a cooperatives, but for these 5, we really do have to go out to bid for operational reasons, for political reasons. I mean, we live in the real world. So expiring contracts are kind of your low-hanging fruit. I'll remember a contract, it just sticks out, even this so many years later. Kitchen utensils. Somebody came forward, one of my buyers, and said, we need some kitchen utensils. I'm like, what? You can go to the 99-cent store and get kitchen utensils. What are we doing? And she says, no, it's for our park and rec centers. And I said, well, how much possible spend can we have? Well, when we looked at the spend over the life of that previous expiring contract, I think the whole contract was $500 for a 5-year contract. And I thought, we're not going to put a bid in place for that again. Look at our existing MRO, maybe office supplies, because they do, you know, lunchroom supplies. Let's just use another existing contract. So that's part of being the leadership, the strategic part. If you have 500 contracts for your agency, do you really need 500 contracts for your agency? Or can some of those be combined a bit or done a different way? And then I highly encourage emergency contracts to already have them in place, because when you're in the middle of the emergency, it's hair is on fire, everyone's running around. But if you already have these contracts, maybe your own, but maybe it could be a cooperative contract. You can negotiate with the supplier and say, look, I'm setting this up for emergencies. We may not have an emergency this year, so I may spend $0. But next year we may have a tremendous emergency and I'm gonna spend $500,000 with you. I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but at least you've already set up all the contracts. Make sure the federal language is in there for FEMA. You've got it all set. You're a member of the co-op, or you've checked all the boxes. So now it's just sitting there pretty and ready to go. A lot of people don't do that until the actual emergency. And I say, do it ahead of time. And then you may need to educate some other folks. And I think it should be part of your outreach to your internal departments about this concept of cooperative purchasing, because they're not trained in procurement and you know they want the easy way. So if you could give them a pathway or a choice, this is one way to make procurement look better and move faster, because the number one complaint they have against us is we are so slow. And it's not us. We just have to follow a lot of rules and regulations and timelines. And maybe this is a way to get those, let's just say, louder customers taken care of. And then finally, I would suggest you go on and download a copy of the new Global Best Practices paper that's on the NIGP website. NCPP signed an MOU with NIGP 5 years ago to be the strategic advisor in the area of cooperative procurement. Last year at Forum was a first time offered cooperative track where you could attend 3 sessions and a workshop, then take a test and get a cooperative badge. This year, we're planning some new spectacular workshops that we're outside of the box, because I always want to be changing things up and also addressing the challenges that procurement has. Nothing stays stagnant in our industry. And so we want to make sure we're giving you the information you need. So back to that leadership question. Many of you are sitting in your chairs right now thinking, well, I think I'm a leader, but what will you be known for? And it's part of your legacy. So when I was creating a leadership presentation last month for Capo, I actually had my daughter-in-law who was visiting me, and she used to work for Ventura County within California. And now she works for the state of California, not in procurement, in a whole nother division. And so I was letting her review the presentation, and she said, you know what? The best manager I ever had was the first manager who hired me into government. And his message to me was this: many people start thinking about their legacy toward the end of their career or when they're about to leave a job. What are you going to be known for? What are those identifiers that when people say your name, these are the words or what they think about you? And what he told her was this: it starts today. This is your first day on the job. You are building your legacy today. So my thought is, well, for any one of us, start building the legacy today. And what do you want to be known for? Great leaders have a legacy that will last the test of time. But here's the thing: you can work towards a legacy, but others are going to actually define you. I mean, I would love that you would say, oh, she's just fabulous, but that's not for me to say. That's for you to think and know. So I have to work on my actions to be fabulous. Work on your legacy every single day, and don't think about it at the end of your career. Do it today and do it now. And that kind of concludes our presentation for today.
Well, thank you, Tammy and Mariel. Does anybody that's still online have any follow-up questions for either of our speakers today? Mariel was able to put a whole bunch of information in the chat, and Jenny and Victor also put some links to NIGP's website. And it looks like Jen from City of Seattle also added Washington State Auditor's Guidance on piggybacking. That is a great document to use, especially if you're looking at establishing policies and procedures.
Mariel, someone's asking, are NASPO Value Point and Sourcewell contracts in Pavilion right now?
Yeah, they are. NASPO, as you probably know, is a little bit trickier because you have to have a participating addendum from your state to be able to use the contract. So if there is one from your state, it should show up in search results when there is a relevant contract you can use. But yes, and if it's helpful, we have a whole list of cooperative contract. I think there are more than 24. Tammy, you're probably the expert in the exact number of like who is all out there. But it feels like there's kind of a new one every day popping up.
Yeah,
There's
new one is born every day.
Yeah. So we as I said, we have over 400 sources. We do cover most of the major national purchasing cooperatives. Where there's a lot of overlap between Tammy's organization and the listings that we provide. But we also have the state and local contracts too. And we're working on, I think the experience isn't as good as it could be in Washington, mostly because we don't have as much local data yet. We've been focused on a few other regions where, again, there's just been kind of proactive interest to get to a certain level of data. And again, we've just kind of seen that's a really exciting moment. So if you reach out to me, I think I shared my email, but I'm happy to share the kind of list of the co-ops that we do have and some of the other resources if helpful.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. Well
Okay.
done.
Well, thank you
Well,
again.
this was a lunch and learn. I hope you had a wonderful lunch while we were talking. I'm going to go eat my lunch now.
That's right. We're on the same time zone.